You know how to hold it all together, but when it comes to your relationships, something's always missing. Welcome to Emotionally Wealthy, a podcast for high achievers who are ready to trade emotional disconnection for clarity, fulfillment, and relationships that are nourishing, not draining. I'm your host, Karen Conlon, licensed therapist, transformational coach, and your guide in turning insight into action. Are you ready for it? Let's do this. Welcome once again to the Emotionally Wealthy podcast. I am Karen Conlon. Today's conversation is about what happens when life interrupts our ability to push through and demands that we have a deeper kind of listening. I'm joined today by Karen DeBaun, a clinical social worker with over 30 years of experience. She's the owner of Yoga Mudra, a speaker on anxiety, stress, burnout, and finding calm in uncertain times. Karen is also the author of the forthcoming daily reflections book, See You on the Mat. Her personal journey is really fascinating, which I'm really excited to talk about today and share with all of you, because it's a journey that includes a life-changing accident that then became a catalyst for deep emotional self-awareness. It was through the recovery after that accident, that was when Karen began uncovering unconscious beliefs and some of the self-limiting narratives that had been quietly shaping her life, the way she lived her lives, the people she cared for. Karen's story really speaks to the shift from that unconscious reacting to a very conscious and aligned living. I'm so glad that you're here for it. Karen, welcome to Emotionally Wealthy. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about the conversation.
Yes, me too. I want to start with asking you about Karen DeBaun before the accident. I'd love to know a little bit about your life, who you were before you were a therapist, and just give us a little bit of insight about you and how you would describe the pace of the life that you were living and maybe even where you learned to live at that pace.
Big question. I
Yeah.
guess I do kind of mark a lot of my life kind of pre my motorcycle accident and post my motorcycle accident. I went to school and became a clinical social worker when I was pretty young. I went right through college, right to grad school, right into working. So,
So in your
um,
20s, early 20s.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So I
Hmm.
started right away.
Yeah.
And I guess at the core, I have always had a desire to be a helper
Yeah.
and to really become a facilitator. Because
Hmm.
over time, what you recognize pretty early when you're in a helping profession is that it's really not your job to do the work. It's your job to provide a space that's safe and that's comfortable for people to sort of explore their own journey, their
Yeah.
own strengths, old patterns, that sort of thing. And so, what I love about both my clinical social work and later in life, about 20 years ago, starting with yoga, is a really very parallel processes. Same kinds of things going on the mat if you're taking the time to really explore what are my strengths, oh, this is evolving for me, this is interesting, didn't know this was going on. So both places I think were um, avenues that I could use to really be of service and to help other people.
When you mentioned the motorcycle accident, obviously it was a critical and really impactful sort of transformational moment in many ways. And because this show is really about self-awareness, understanding who we are, how we were shaped, and then also learning how to change that through the recognition of patterns and recognition of behavior, right? Becoming aware. I'm really curious to know when that accident happened as you became still, not just physically, but in other ways. So what was that journey like for you?
I would not have considered it at the time,
Sure.
but I think looking back on it, I think it was a really was a pivot point
Yeah.
and an opportunity for me to really change direction a little bit
Yeah.
in terms of how I was living my life and the things that I decided to focus on. So the motorcycle accident happened about 20 years ago. So I was in my early 40s. And so call it a midlife crisis, call it what you will, but I was tired of riding on the back of my husband's motorcycle and decided I would get one of my own and do this thing. Had an accident pretty early on, a crush injury to my left foot, which maybe doesn't sound like much, but a crush injury is pretty big. And they said to me, this is a 2 to 3 year recovery process for you. It's like, okay. Um, and I had just started taking some yoga classes just prior to the accident. So when my orthopedist says, well, what kinds of things do you like to do? I'm like, well, I love to walk. I love to golf. I love to do yoga. He was like, that's fantastic because you'll have some things to go back to. So over the
Mm.
course of my recovery, yoga and my mat really became a place where I could just kind of lay it all down,
Right.
literally and
Literally and
figuratively. Yeah,
figuratively.
absolutely. So, I mean, there were times when my first classes, I came in my boot. I was still in my boot, and I knew that yoga was structured in such a way that I could lay on my mat the entire time and do nothing if I wanted to and be accepted and okay. So that's what I was talking about, that safety, that safe space.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I came to find was that I just felt really held,
Yeah.
very nurtured and supported in that space. And that's when these little niggles, little kind of knocks at the door kind of came in for me about maybe you should be leading yoga.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking to myself, this is not, no, I'm not, the old imposter syndrome rears its head. And anyway, it kept knocking. And so I pursued some yoga teacher training. And luckily in that was told very early on that there's a place in the yoga world for everyone. And I really believe that that's true, both for
Yeah.
individuals and for teachers. And so it really was a really formative event in my life. And as you said earlier, a catalyst for me to kind of consider, who do I want to be at this point in my
Mm.
life? What do I still wanted to be, that helper, that person that was supporting others. And yoga made a lot of sense to me just because in clinical social work, a lot of it is about, it's talk therapy.
Yes.
And nothing wrong with that. And it's extraordinarily valuable, but it only takes you so far.
Mm-hmm.
And there's now a whole nother awareness, of course, about the body mind connection
Mm-hmm.
and how you can talk yourself and think yourself through all kinds of things. But if your body is saying something else, you're going to listen to your body first.
Yeah.
And so being able to integrate those two ideas was very intriguing to me. And so off and running I went.
Yeah. And so, with that in mind, as I picture you on the mat, I'm picturing you with your boot in recovery. Obviously, this wasn't your first time on the mat. You had had some exposure to it before, but now you came to it in a different headspace, maybe with a different thought process about and whether that was conscious or unconscious, but there was some kind of shift that I'm thinking must have happened right after you had your accident. And so I'm curious about how you showed up differently, if you did, and also what kinds of little droplets of revelations started to come as you continued to do the work on yourself, on that somatic work, your body work, your reflections, all through this platform.
Well, there's just so much that I was able to learn on the mat. First of all, it was a place of rest and a place for me to sort of restore, and just work on my own healing at my own rate without feeling pushed.
Hmm.
So that was amazing. But it really became a place for me to pause. And I tend to be, kind of a fiery redheaded, my hair's a little darker right now, but so a little short tempered, a little quick to react, all of that. And really the biggest gift I think I've been given in yoga is a movement away from so much reactivity
Mm.
and more of a sense of how can I respond. And those two words I play with all the time in my own work, in my own day to day living, because I tend to be a little quick trigger,
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
little fast. I don't like lollygagging and dinging around. I like to move and get going. And yoga has said, slow it down,
Yeah.
pause, get into your breath. What
Yeah.
does your body know? It's okay if you don't know something. So it's helped me get into my own intuition, um, and really that pause and time to reflect on just who I want to be, how I want to use my energy on any given day.
Yeah.
Which sounds pretty basic, but was pretty revolutionary for me because I did not have that kind of awareness pre my accident. It was all just about go, respond, be good at your job, push, push, push. A lot of controlling kind of behavior. And not that I've lost all of those things, life's a
Sure.
journey and those are always sort of things that we constantly have to address and revisit. But it is just a friend of mine even said to me a couple of years into my yoga, I was driving down the street. She's a neighbor of mine. And she goes, you drove by and like the expression on your face was just like so chill and so relaxed. I was like, really? That me?
Yeah.
So without even some of my awareness, it was starting to shape kind of how I presented, which is, I think, really pretty cool.
It's really interesting how crisis so often reveals these patterns that productivity keeps hidden. So we go into crisis, and it's not until we hit crisis mode and we're needing to stop, needing to pause, needing to reflect. It's not like you didn't know yourself, but you started to think about your reactions a little bit more. I'd love to know a little bit more about that. When you started to think about, like you were saying, I react fairly quickly and no lollygagging and all that. Where did you learn that? First of all, let's kind of go back a little bit and start at the beginning. Where did you experience that? Was it like in your environment? Was it something that you witnessed? Was it something that was expected of you? It's kind of where did you learn that message that we don't have time to
Yeah.
stop here?
Yeah. Well, I think part of it's a cultural thing.
Mhm.
That we all tend to kind of think that we're just so busy and there's limited hours in the day and we all better be super productive. But,
Yeah.
I think in reflecting, I come from Minnesota originally, proud Nordic, stoic Norwegian types who
Mhm.
don't exactly wear their heart on their sleeve.
Mhm.
And, the old pioneer spirit is work hard. This is
Yeah.
how we survive, right? No time for emotional, oh, I wonder if. so,
Yeah. There's
so I
no time
think
for
that
that.
all of that has really seeped into multi generations of just working hard and continuing to push forward. And we really don't have the time and space for a lot of emotional content, particularly if it's whiny, particularly if it's angry. Oh no.
Mhm.
So that was one of the things that originally drew me to social work was that I recognized that there was not a lot of freedom to be very emotional in my family.
Yeah.
My dad was pretty good at telling us kids that he loved us and all of that. My mom, I know very much that she loves and cares for us, but she really struggles to utter those words because that's
Yeah.
not part of how she was raised. So I think that's a piece of it. And then I had high achieving parents. So high achieving parents have high achieving children
Mm.
or the attempt to.
Yeah.
And so in being the oldest kind of was, that level of responsibility and all of those. So there's all those little layers I think that add up to somebody that might have a tendency to want to please other people and work really hard and move really quickly and kind of push away the emotional content to some degree. So again, through my clinical social work training, I was allowed to sort of really take a look at some of that emotional content. But then I think the motorcycle accident said, did you know there's an entirely different layer to this?
Yes.
which is that body mind connection that says that maybe who we are right here in this moment is absolutely enough.
Yeah. I mean, that is a really powerful message, especially powerful if it is a message that you can resource from within yourself. So many relationships transition, whether they actually transition or maybe they just transition in your mind because of what you become aware of. And so it's a really powerful thing to be able to harness that message internally from inside of you. Um, I want to touch back for a moment on something you said a minute ago about emotion.
Mhm,
It's and the relationship between emotion, the expression of emotion, and the idea of survival. We talk about emotional inheritance. In other places, we talk about intergenerational trauma.
mhm,
They are maybe not the same, but they are absolutely related. And just based on what you described about the cultural background and the values that were instilled, work hard, be strong, do not express anger, definitely not. We don't have time for any of that. You just need to keep going. If we were to go back, let's say some generations, this was a survival skill, right? This was not a thing that people did, that parents did, that families did to hurt the children or hurt the family. It was quite literally survival. We do not have time to be able to address your sadness or your anger or your irritability, as the crops need tending to, the animals need tending to. We
mhm.
have to make a journey across the country or whatever it might have been
Right,
generations
right.
ago. And then that's a thing that keeps getting passed on. Um, I could see how then clinical social work gave you permission, as it gives many of us permission, to allow ourselves to dip our toes into the emotion, even if it's a little bit safer because we're working with other people and we're holding space for them.
Mhm.
And it's a little bit of a softer introduction. But what did you do? What did you do when you did have sadness? What did you do when you did have anger? Because as you know, I know, those emotions exist. They don't go anywhere. Now, we might manifest them in some other ways. So I'm just curious about how you handled when you had these emotions that either verbally or non-verbally you were told, yeah, we're not doing this or we don't do this.
Well, I think luckily for me, I always had a really strong friendship base growing up and as a teen and young adult. So if you have friends and other folks that kind of get and understand you, you can share some of that emotional content that way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and I did start to kind of be the person in the room in the family to just sort of call out stuff that was supposed to be kind of, no, no, don't talk about that. And over time, I think I learned how to like not just kind of blast people with it, but to just sort of allow it to be in the room. So I think over time it does shift everybody else. One of the things you learn about in social work is that we all live and work in systems, right? So one small change at
Yeah.
any point in the system can start to impact everybody else. So I do think that over time, as I learned more about my own emotional capacity and the importance of, being honest about what was going on, that I was able then to start to share that with family and with friends. And then, certainly then in the work itself, you learn as you're going through and helping other people, you can't help but sort of learn more about yourself in the process. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And so it sounds like, okay, you had a great support system, at least like even with just friends, right? And
mhm, mhm.
um those are the types of experiences that help us, kind of feel a little bit more normal about expressing our emotions, right? Because if in one area of our lives we can't, but then we have another area where, yeah, absolutely, this is welcome, it kind of helps you feel a little bit more validated and okay with having these emotions. So having a support system, it sounds like that's one of the things that helped you. Um,
Absolutely.
Yeah, and then you started to feel more confident about bringing these things up to your family or showing up with other expressions that were maybe not super okay. Can you tell us a little bit about that discomfort that you maybe felt, or maybe the family felt, when you were kind of shaking things up a little bit by bringing this up? How did you navigate that? How was it received?
I think the openness and the support was there.
Hmm.
It's just that it was something that people weren't quite used to. So there wasn't a push to shut me down or anything like that. And again, my father's experience, while was also a stoic Norwegian, he was a heart on the sleeve guy. His motto was, I cry at the grand opening of the grocery store." So he was a very emotive person.
Yeah.
And so there was some permission there. It's just that it wasn't always, kind of right at the surface. The other thing is, we're talking that I recognized really just a few months ago. I'm, in the process of writing a book, and I started realizing that the process of writing for me has always been a big, big part of how I process and how I make sense of the world. I was writing poems and
Mhm.
advice columns, and I mean, you name it. I was doing all kinds of writing as a kid in elementary school and certainly through high school, and didn't really focus on it. It was just, to me, something that I did. I wrote a poem in high school when a fellow student died, and
Mm,
the parents came to me and asked if they could read it at her service.
wow.
I was like,
Wow.
"Wow, yeah, okay." So, once in a while, that's the newest niggle, along with, "Hey, Karen, maybe you should be doing, yoga and teaching it." The latest one the last few years is, "Hey, Karen, maybe you should be writing a book." So it's another venue, another way for me to try to share, try to provide support and space for other people as they kind of move through their journey, because it's a reflections book, but also journal prompts and things like that for people to sort of do their own exploration. So I think writing, having a good support network, having a family that was sort of willing to put up with me, all of those things in combination.
It's so interesting to hear you talk about writing being one of the things that you use to allow for self-expression and reflection. Um, in this podcast, I have interviewed people in the mental health field, outside of the mental health field, attorneys, coaches, and I have to tell you, myself included, this is the golden thread that so far has come across every single one of these folks that I've had the privilege of interviewing. At some point, they picked up pen and paper, either, symbolically or on the computer. They picked up pen and
Mhm.
paper and they realized that they had this gift or this wanting to just write. Writing and kind of storytelling to a certain degree has been not just cathartic, but it's been one of the tools that they've used that I have absolutely used since the time I was little, writing poems and
That's
stories and telling
fascinating.
stories. It is really fascinating. And the connection that I'm making, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well, is that, is there something to be said for people who grew up in a household where expression of certain emotions, let's say quote unquote negative emotions, we prefer that we don't go there. Is there something to be said about the connection between that environment and then being able to write it out, put it on paper? Because it hasn't been drawing. And for some people, maybe I need to interview an artist, someone who draws and paints for them, because that would be an interesting thing. But so far, there's been this like very clear connection between that and writing. I'm curious to know what your thoughts are about that.
Well, I just think that's the coolest thing I've heard in a long time. I'm going to have to think some about that. But for me, I can just speak personally. I
Yeah,
think it's two things. Again, I didn't grow up in a super creative family, even though that's kind of a weird term. But when I was growing up, you were either creative or you weren't. You were either
I get
good
that.
at art and all of that stuff, or you weren't. And there's a great book, I'm sure you maybe heard of it, called The Artist's Way, that I read a few years ago. And
Hmm.
it's all about the notion of that we all have creativity within us. So I think that writing taps into our need for creativity. I also think writing has the really unique capacity to help us uncover the unconscious and what's just below the surface. If you just allow yourself the freedom to write
Yeah.
without any kind of criticism, it's amazing the kinds of things that you can explore. And it's a wonderful way to work through intense emotion, I think. It's a wonderful way to get at what's there that wants to be said, and to really feel more guided by your own inner wisdom. So I think the creativity piece is huge. I think that unconscious or subconscious mind piece is a really big part of it too.
It is, it's pretty amazing how when you allow yourself to just write or just express yourself without judgment and without feeling that, oh, this has to be perfect or this has to be right grammatically, or otherwise, and just allow yourself to put your thoughts down, put your reflections down. I feel it's like unlocking one door after another door. And I mean, that's been my experience, is that things just start opening up in my mind and my unconscious and in my body too. There's a sense of relief that I feel after having written for a long time. It's like a feeling of release that I have in my body. And I don't know if that makes sense to you. But
And
just
in some ways, it kind of parallels a meditation process. I haven't
mm,
really thought this completely through, but in meditation, of course, this idea that we're going to somehow quit thinking, that doesn't happen. Our brains work and then are intended to. If our brains quit working, so do we. So but it's a way to slow down, a way to sort of allow things
mm,
to kind of bubble up to the surface. And I think, at least for me, meditation is kind of difficult. Having the act of writing, which is, I think, a form of meditation, at least for me, but I'm doing something so that I'm not just forced to sort of sit.
yeah,
Uh, and and if I can just allow that to flow and not get stuck in sort of the repetitive nature of kind of, the thought processes that we all have day to day, and just sort of let whatever comes flow out. In that way, it's very much like a meditation process where all of a sudden you can have these kind of aha moments like, oh, really? Wow, that's interesting that sort of came up today. Um,
yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that stillness can feel threatening when our identities are built around movement and responsibility and, thinking about what comes next, what comes next. And I think what you're describing here is um, a different type of stillness that also allows the possibility or, allows the truth, which is, your mind doesn't necessarily stop. The difference is that you're being very intentional about where you guide it, because now you're aware, the mind is a natural wanderer. And now you're saying, hey, I just want you to come back here without judgment, but just saying, this is what my mind does. This is what the mind does naturally. And we're just going
mhm,
to bring it
yeah.
back. We're just going to bring it
Mhm,
back. And it's
yep.
okay. So the other thing too that comes to mind is what you're describing kind of feels like a shift from trying to control your body to having a relationship with your body, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great way to frame it. I think all of us tend to, because of the culture we live in and this need for speed sort of thing,
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
yeah.
that it's very easy to sort of set aside the body's needs, what the body's trying to tell us, and any way that we can create a few gaps, a little bit of space, a little
Yeah.
bit of pause, whether that's through writing, meditation, yoga, whatever it might be, there's all kinds of wisdom that the body has. I mean, there's reasons why all these books are being written, and there's reasons why our speech is, gathered around them. Like, oh, that was, the weight of the world on your shoulders, and just some of the different terminology that we use. It's like we know that the body feels all these things, but
Yeah.
haven't really always given ourselves time and permission to really sort of explore what that's about and use that innate body intelligence, and really just feel a little bit more whole. The
Yeah.
word yoga means to yoke, to bring together. So the goal is really to develop you as an entire person, body, mind, and spirit. And we're so good at just shoving off to the side
Yeah.
everything that the body might be asking of us. And when we can kind of bring that into the picture, it just changes things pretty dramatically.
Well, thanks actually for, giving that definition. I did not know that. And I'm sure a lot of listeners do not know that. That's really cool to understand what the meaning of yoga means, which is to bring together, which makes so much sense, because we are talking about the connection between mind and body. And the other thing I think that I've been hearing from you is this shift from it's either this or that to learning to incorporate the word and. It doesn't have to be this or
Mhm.
but it's more of an uh, like a bringing in of the word
More
and.
inclusive. Yes, yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And so going back for a moment to your recovery during the time of your recovery and that stillness that you had to go through, right, as a result.
Mhm.
I'm curious also, were there self-limiting narratives or beliefs that came through during your recovery period that surprised you as they came into awareness? Because earlier you had said that there were things that you didn't even realize, right, about how you were reacting to things. So I'm curious about what were some of those narratives or beliefs that came through.
Mhm. Well, one of the interesting things that you probably know full well too, as a clinical social worker, is that when you're in the role of therapist or coach or whatever it might be, it's not about your business. you know,
Right.
no one wants to go to a therapist and say this is really troubling, and then the therapist goes, "Oh, wait till you hear what I got going on."
Yeah.
It's not the time or place.
Right.
And what's been evolving for me recently, though, is that I think there is value in, like, the conversation we're having today, which is to
Mm,
say that, whether you're a therapist, you're a yoga teacher, or whatever, we all have our struggles, we all have our processes,
yeah.
and when we can kind of talk about that and experience it together, then it's less isolating. I mean, we live in a world that's kind of pushing us apart. We have a loneliness epidemic. Tech is becoming more and more important, and real relationships and face-to-face connections are you have to really work to get them. So it's just so important, I think, to be able to share and to say, this is what's going on for me. And so on the yoga mat, I think I get to do that a little bit because I'm 63 years old. I don't fit the typical description maybe of a yogi. And
Mm,
so I think people have a lot of myths in their mind about w- who does yoga, what yoga is supposed to
interesting.
do,
Hmm.
all of that. And I think it's helpful in some ways to not only create a space for other people to explore what they want and need on the mat, but also to hold up as just an everyday person. Hey, I'm just going through a practice, and I have my limitations too. And it's not about the perfect yoga pose, even though Instagram would like us to think otherwise, that it's about the process and the being with ourselves and being with one another. Those are the kinds of things that really can kind of seep in and really do some valuable work for us, I think, if we give ourselves the time and space.
Absolutely, and it makes me think about your yoga practice, your physical or somatic awareness, um, all of these different moments and points during your recovery period and post recovery that um, it almost sounds like it became less about physical recovery and then more about being able to regulate yourself, trusting yourself. Was that a little bit of what it was like for you? Did you go through moments of that, or was there a moment
Yeah,
where, yeah,
because if you think about the idea of
yeah, yeah,
trauma is all of those things that you just said that you have to work on. You know, the physical aspects of my healing were one part of it, but
yeah,
I think back on it now, and there were any like just if I were outside and there was like a little incline that I had to go down,
yeah,
I was like, "Oh gosh, I hope I don't fall." I was so worried about additional injury and things like that, and just everything felt really precarious and scary. So it really was helpful in my physical recovery, but much more so in terms of my emotional recovery from the trauma, which was that I was really injured, had to really pause a lot of things in my life for a while as I recovered, and just this, I guess, wake up call that boy, in just an instant,
yeah,
your life can change so dramatically, and the potential that's there. And being able then to just sort of say, okay, here I am. If I'm going to do this recovery, what do I want to look like post as opposed to pre? And I don't know that I ever
mm,
really thought about it in those kinds of cognitive terms. I think it was more just a body, mind, spirit thing where I just said, okay, if I'm going to recover, this is an amazing thing that I am able to recover. How can I share it? And how can it continue to help me evolve and do the work that I feel like I was sort of given to do on the planet?
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And one of the things that comes to mind as you say that is that it sounds like you're noticing, or you noticed a difference between how you were reacting, how you were reacting from an unconscious space versus how you were reacting from a space of awareness.
Yeah, yeah.
What changed? What's the difference now that you're able to look back and now to the present? What would you say is different about the way that you were responding or reacting before this type of deeper level awareness versus now?
I do think that I am calmer. I'm less needy to sort of prove my point,
Mm.
to demand or to insist that things kind of go a certain way. My husband might argue that point, but I do think that over time that I have gotten a little softer, that
Mm.
I've been able to just stop long enough to go, "Oh, I've got a choice about whether or not I jump into that one or not." Um,
Hmm.
and I don't always have to. And I think for me, the process of yoga has helped me just get clear about how do I want to be today
Yes.
in the next
Mhm.
hour. And if you mess up, all is not lost. Every day, every moment, every breath is a new opportunity to start again.
Mhm.
And we all need permission to start again. None of us is perfect. So just those kinds of awarenesses and the sense of groundedness that I feel in my body that I don't think that I felt before. Feeling as though I didn't think about whether I was strong or weak or flat. I just didn't think about a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And now and maybe part of it's the aging process, but I think about, well, how am I standing? How am I being? How am I speaking? Those kinds of things, not through any like, today I'm going to, it's not that clear cut. It's
Yeah.
not like up on the conscious level. It's again sort of that bubbling up stuff about, wow, this is what is occurring for me as I continue my practice. It's a practice, not a one and done.
Yeah.
So every time you return to the mat, it's a little different experience. Sometimes you're really wobbly and not terribly successful if you want to team it that. There's a lot of information there. Like as
Right.
a yoga teacher, I'm sure people think, oh gosh, her balance has got to be just rock solid. Some days, yes, some days, no.
Yeah.
Guess what? That's because then I have to kind of go, why am I wobbly today?
Hmm.
Well, what's that mean? What am I wobbly about? So it's just so instructive and for me in terms of being a continual kind of a wake up call or a check in to sort of go, oh, all right,
Yeah.
here you are today. So it's just it. I don't know that I can really put into words what I feel is the value of yoga practice. And it's my life's mission to have everybody doing yoga because I just think it's so life changing. It really has been for me. And it, it just cultivates a different level of awareness and a different way of being and moving in the world.
Well, yeah, I mean, I certainly, as we continue our conversation and as I'm hearing you describe the changes that you've gone through physically, emotionally, psychologically, probably biologically also as well, I'm hearing that for you and your experience, being able to practice, to have somatic practices, specifically through yoga, um, here's some of the things I'm hearing. I'm hearing that you have really leaned into curiosity with yourself. I'm hearing that uh, you're allowing yourself to have questions for yourself. Sometimes, in some cases, question yourself, and in other cases, have questions for yourself about whatever is happening, about a situation, about the environment. The other thing I'm hearing is choice. You know, so much of that reactivity, and again, I don't presume to assume that this is your experience, but a lot of times that reactivity, that need for control, is sourced in anxiety, to try to make sure that the outcome is just such, or what we need to feel better, or to make sure that things are okay. And so what I'm getting from you is that you've gotten so much more than just physical. I mean, it's all of these things that have opened up for you. And the other thing that I'm getting is that this reconnecting with your body in a way has made you um be able to shift that anxiety and that stress, or at least the way that you manage anxiety and stress in your life. What's your reaction to all of that? Does any of that resonate? Is it true for you? I'd love to know your experience with that, and just, if any of that makes sense for you.
Yes. Well, you mentioned early on the idea of curiosity, and that's a word
Mm.
that I have been playing a lot with lately. So,
Hmm.
uh, I think you're spot on in that observation, because really that's what our lives are all about. Is to sort
Yeah.
of consider, to not get stuck in thinking we know the answers, uh,
Yeah.
to
Yep.
maybe considering another opinion. I know this sounds revolutionary, but I love that idea of curiosity and just
Yeah.
being able to open up the lens a little bit and say what else might also be true. And you said earlier, instead of this or this, that maybe it's an and. So I think both of those things have really been true for me. So again, to go back to the whole trauma idea,
Hmm.
trauma informed care is all about choices, right?
Correct. Yeah.
About allowing people who have had choice taken or yanked away from them the opportunity. I don't necessarily do strictly trauma informed work, but so many of us have been traumatized in one way or another. So I really try to include that in my language, as a teacher, that you could choose to do this or
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
And so it's partly teaching people that they have choices along the way, and then sort of allowing that and creating that safe space for that to occur. So it's
Yeah.
been certainly true in my life, and I hope that's something that other people can come to as well.
I think that because we've been trained and obviously have experience in trauma work and understand anxiety and all of these things from the clinical practice and that experience, we understand how important it is to give people choice, right? So that they understand that they have agency, that they always have a right to choose. And as a matter of fact, even when I'm inviting guests on, one of the things that I always do is hey, let's set up a little, 20-minute time to meet, just to make sure that it's a good fit. I do that for not just for myself, but I do that for the other person as well. I know what it feels like to feel like I have committed to this. I have to do it, even though my heart says no or I don't want to,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Once you are involved in the world of trauma informed care, it kind of, I don't know, at least for me, it spills over into other places.
Yeah.
And it's something that I think I just organically go to as well. So that resonates very deeply, what you said about understanding the need to have choice, not just for other people, but even for myself. And so, given that that's one of the tools that you practice, for those people out there who are listening who want to start to do this, but it feels hard, we don't know where to start. How do we start moving in that direction of maybe even understanding, accepting that we have a choice? Where can we start?
Well, again, that's a really good question that you ask, because all of us fear the unknown. We don't like
Yeah.
unpredictability. So part of it when we want to try something new is that it feels scary because we can't predict how it's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I think I tend to teach yoga students who are not terribly excited about a health club experience or a yoga studio experience. They like the online format. There's some
Mhm.
safety there to be able to just be in your own home. Um, and it takes away some of the performance aspect of it, even though I don't think yoga is a performance at all. But so many people think that when they go to a yoga class, other people are going to be looking at them.
Yeah.
And trust me, everybody else is feeling wobbly. No one's looking at you. But
Yeah.
it's it's one of the barriers that you have to get up and over.
Yeah.
And so I have a PDF that's available on my website, in fact, called 5 Reasons Why It's Hard to Start New Things, because because you hear this all the time. The people are like, well, that'd be cool. I should do that. And then
Right.
it stops there. It
Yeah.
stops there either because they are worried about performance, or they're not sure what to expect, or or they are kind of closed off. When I was talking about opening up the lens, they think they already know what it
Yes.
is. Either it's going to be too woo woo, or it's just really just stretching and relaxing. And I need something different than they think they know what it is. And
Yeah.
I guess what
Yeah.
I would say is use a little of your own personal curiosity and try. And
Yeah.
again, it's a choice. If you don't like it, then you learn that that's really not my thing. But so many of us have a hard time starting anything new. That the old Nike commercial, just do it. Like, yeah, okay. But for a lot of people, just
If we could,
the
we
act of
would.
actually trying to do it once you try it, then it's like, oh, okay, why was I going through all this worry about all of this? So I
Yeah.
guess that would be my advice to people, is to just take a step, to be curious, and that it's a choice and you can take it or leave it.
Wonderful. So again, leaning into that flexibility of it is okay. And this is just a try. And just because you start doesn't mean that you have to finish. And
Right.
what you were saying before too, should. I think that when people say the word should, it is automatically, I should try that. Well, it sounds relatively harmless, but that should, I think oftentimes, at least in my experience, comes with a lot of potential shame and it comes with a lot of emotional, psychological consequences. So I think also being able to watch how you're talking to yourself, what's the narrative, what are the words that you're using when you are thinking about trying something new, and is that being harsh? Does that make you feel like
Mm,
it's a little harsh on yourself? Right.
mm.
um and I'm curious, for those listeners who feel something stirring but haven't had a big crisis maybe, um what would you recommend that they pay attention to now?
Well, I think so often we do exactly that. We wait until there's a crisis, or we're so uncomfortable we can't take it anymore. But our bodies are speaking to us every day. And
Hmm.
if we just slow it down enough to listen to what our inner wisdom has for us, what the universe, the divine, whatever you want to call it, where they're trying to lead us. All of those things, I think, can be just a way to say, well, maybe I should just explore this a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you said it so beautifully. It doesn't mean you're committing, you're not signing on the dotted line. Just being willing to sort of explore something and deciding that I can try something new. It's a big step for a lot of people. And there's just all kinds of potential baggage there, but that doesn't mean you have to keep carrying it. You
That's
can
right.
decide to set it down and try something
Yeah.
and see where it goes.
Yeah. Set it down, see how that lightens your load. You can pick it back up, but
Yeah.
just try putting it down for a minute. I love that. That feels a lot less threatening
Mhm.
than to, like you said, just do it and just go for it. No, it's okay. Micro moments, micro steps. Try
Mhm.
it out. Dip your toe in the water and see how it feels. Right? Can you get used to
Absolutely.
it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Karen, this has been such a pleasure. You are writing a book. I would love to let our listeners know, first of all, how do we get in touch with you if they want to explore your classes or connect with you? What's the best place for them to find you? And also, if you're ready to talk about give us a little insight about your book, we would love to know a little bit more.
Okay. Well, the very best way to find me is via my website, www.yoga-mudra, Moodra. That's a little play on words. Mudra, Mudra, is the, hand gestures in yoga. And I spelled it mood again because of my mental health background. So,
Love it.
yogamudra.com has all of my class information. As my book progresses, there will probably be a book page as part of my website as well. It's entitled See You on the Mat, and it's really a book of daily reflections throughout the year. It really
Mm,
started as short writings that I did for final relaxation time in yoga.
mm.
So no one wants a yoga teacher that blathers on and on during final relaxation. So it's meant to be just like short little things to think about. So for some people, that laying still and being quiet is
Yeah.
difficult. So if you can give people a little nugget, well, maybe you want to just kind of think about this. Gives
Yeah.
them something as opposed to like, what am I supposed to do now? How long is this going to last? So it kind of came from that. And so over time, I had all these writings and I decided that maybe I should be putting them in a book. So the book is daily reflections and then some journal prompts, because the goal is not for me to tell you how you feel, but to sort of say, does this ever happen to you? Do you ever feel stressed? Are you ever really critical and mean to yourself? And then some journal prompts about maybe writing about that. So all different
Yeah.
kinds of topics and stuff over the course of a year.
I love that. I'm so looking forward to that. I know so many listeners are going to be looking forward to that because it is really hard to know where to start. And it sounds like this book is going to be just, a perfect starting point for you to just give you an idea and then let your mind go where it's going to go. So that's wonderful. Karen, thank you so much for being here. I have one final question for you, actually, which
Okay.
is something that I've been asking all of our guests. If you were to define what it is to be emotionally wealthy or to have emotional wealth, what would you say? How would you define that?
Mm, great question. I think to me, emotional wealth really is about understanding yourself and having the capacity to feel all of your emotions
Hmm.
and to be able to identify them all and to really be able to bring together all aspects of
Mm.
yourself, your body, your mind, your spirit, so that you can feel integrated, whole, as if you know yourself a little bit better day to day.
Karen, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's been delightful. Thank you so much for having me, Karen. I really appreciate it.
It's my privilege. And thank you all for showing up for yourselves, for listening to the Emotionally Wealthy podcast. If this episode gave you insight, clarity, or a perspective that you needed, or if you have someone who you feel would benefit from hearing it, please go ahead and share it. Follow the show. And if you want to leave a review, that would be amazing because it will help other people find the show and these conversations as well. And until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and stay emotionally wealthy. See you next time. Oh, hey, quick reminder for you that this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnoses, or treatment. Always consult a qualified professional with any questions you might have.